Week 15 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few defense DST units I look to start this week. The first one, the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Chiefs, their defense has been a great team this year, only holding opponents mid-teens, low 20s majority of the ball games this season. So this week, a great matchup versus the New England Patriots in Gillette that give up the second most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So I know the last few weeks, in terms of putting up fantasy points, the numbers haven't been there for this Chief team. But like I said, they're keeping teams in the teens to low 20s. Week 12 at Vegas, 17 points allowed, a sack in that one. Week 13 at Green Bay, 27 points, 2 sacks. And Week 14 versus Buffalo, 20 points allowed, 3 sacks and an INT. So this week versus a bad offensive line and one of the worst offenses in the league, with no Ramondre Stevenson, even though Zeke Elliott filled in well for this Patriot team. And Bailey Zapp's still a quarterback that's unknown, and we don't know if he's a great quarterback or it was just a good game last week versus Pittsburgh. I think this Kansas City Chiefs defense could go out there and have a good performance. The next DST is the Miami Dolphins. So this Dolphin defense the last few weeks is starting to get things going, and they've been playing good football, no doubt about it. In Week 15, a good matchup versus the New York Jets. They give up the third most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So I know this Jet team, they played a great game. They scored 30 points. Zach Wilson went over 300 yards. But in my opinion, it was just one good game, and it doesn't mean much. So Week 12 versus the same Jet team, even though Tim Boyle did start that game, 7 points allowed, 7 sacks, 2 interceptions, including a 99-yard touchdown for a pick six before halftime on a Hail Mary, which you've never seen. So this week, I think they'll get pressure on Zach Wilson, and they'll make this Jet team one-dimensional, where they could get up to a 10, 14-point lead early as Miami. And this Jet team, obviously, you know they're going to have to throw the football a whole lot, and they're really not going to move it a whole lot as well. So this week, I like the Dolphins once again as a start. The next start, the Atlanta Falcons. So the Falcons is a one-week streaming option, is a good option for fantasy owners with a good matchup at the Panthers that give up the 5th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So the last few games for Atlanta, Week 12 versus New Orleans, 15 points allowed, a sack, a pick six, and a fumble recovery. Week 13 at the Jets in that game, 6 points allowed, 4 sacks, an interception, 2 fumble recoveries. And Week 14 was a tough one versus Tampa Bay Bucks, 27 points allowed and a sack. But like I said, with a good matchup versus a weak Carolina offensive line. Bryce Young, it's been a tough rookie season. A lot of people already calling him a bust, but obviously not many weapons over there in Carolina. Only Chuba Hubbard and Adam Thielen. But this week, the Atlanta Falcons as a streaming option, definitely a DST I look to start this week. The next DST is the Indianapolis Colts. So this Indianapolis Colts team, I know they give up a lot of points, but they also find ways to score points off of turnovers and on pick sixes and fumble recoveries. So the last few weeks for Indianapolis, Week 12 versus Tampa Bay, 20 points allowed, 6 sacks, an INT, a fumble recovery. Week 13 at the Titans, 26 points allowed, 6 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, a pick six, a block kick. And Week 14 at Cincinnati, 34 points allowed, but they had a pick six in that game. So Week 15, a good matchup versus the Steelers. Their offense has been in shambles all season. It didn't matter if it's Kenny Pickett, and now it's Mitchell Trubisky in there filling in for the injured Kenny Pickett. And I think they could get pressure on Trubisky early and often. And like I said, they got ball hawks in the secondary like Moore, who's had a few return pick six touchdowns this season. And this week versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think this could be in the teens, low 20s between these teams. And Indianapolis could cause a few turnovers. In the 5th and final defense DST unit I look to start this week is the New Orleans Saints. So this team, DST, in good matchups this season, have taken advantage. And going back to last week's ball game, what a game it was versus the Panthers. 6 points allowed, 4 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, getting a touchdown off of one. So Week 15, a great matchup versus the New York Giants. Believe it or not, give up the most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So Tommy DeVito has definitely been better than Tyrod Taylor and Daniel Jones this season, even though I know it's not saying much. But anyway, New Orleans, they get pressure on the quarterback led by Cameron Jordan. The secondary, they've had some decent plays over the season as well. I know Marshawn Lattimore probably won't play in this game once again, but New Orleans is a defense with a good matchup, especially at home where they played better, where they're a good start this week. So that's a few defense DST units I look to start in Week 15 of the fantasy football season.